So we talked, we just kind of refreshed what a scene is, that, unit of contained action, dialogue and setting that generally happens in a time period, and that dynamic and engaging way to demonstrate action, character, etc. Scenes are where characters use words and deeds to communicate information. And a reminder that when you feel bored or impatient, you've probably dropped out of scene. I'm not going to go over all the ingredients, just a reminder of the things that do come into a scene. So scene types, I was saying it can be easy to fall into like mastering a certain kind of scene with a certain kind of energy. You're like, I know how to write this scene. I've done it a million times now. And then kind of realize that there's like a lack of texture or energy, or they all seem to kind of have the same quality to them. And so scene types are a way to actually be kind of conscious or conscientious about what kind of scene you're writing and what functions it has, not just as a general scene, but does it have a particular function in the story? So last week we talked about first scenes, literally the first scene of any story, and then what I called lay of the land scenes, which are anytime a character kind of passes through some sort of threshold, emotional or psychological or physical, you sort of set the scene all over again to show this new reality or new place they're in. So that's what we did last week. And this week we're going to talk about crisis scenes and contemplative scenes. Okay. And you guys can see the slides? Yeah, no? Yes, no?
We're only seeing the first one, the title page.
I don't understand why this one presentation in this class does this, because it doesn't happen in any other of my classes.
Yeah, I think this did this last week.
It did, and I don't understand why with this one.
Okay, now I see crisis scenes.
I know, because,
Yeah.
but what happens?
Oh yeah, because I can still see like your main screen.
What about this version? No, that doesn't work. It doesn't happen to any other class. I have no idea why it always happens in this one.
Huh.
Can you see that it's moving through slides right now? What's it say?
Scene types, crisis scenes.
Why?
So it's still that first.
Why
And your screen. Like I see your the bar at the top is brown.
Pissing me off.
I see crisis scenes now.
I know. Well, what happens if I go there? Can you see that it moved? Or is it still on crisis scenes?
Still on
Crisis
crisis
scenes.
scenes.
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding me? Hold on. Sorry, guys. I don't understand what's happening.
Have you gone to slideshow?
Yeah. I go to slideshow. I can play either from start or current slide.
Yeah, and we can see your menu
I'm
pulled
gonna
out
set up
too.
show and see if there's
Right.
anything.
If I can pull it into a new window, maybe that will work. Okay. I know you, okay, you see crisis scenes, right?
Yeah.
What about next scene? Did it move?
No.
I'm about to punch my computer. Why is it doing this?
Under slideshow, can you go under? I think there was something you said like setting up a show or something.
There's presenter view.
Set up show. See set up show. See if there's anything in there.
Huh.
Should it be presented by a speaker? All
Let's try that.
Manually maybe.
Ah, now there's arrows. So I bet that worked. Can you see it?
Okay,
Shane?
got something.
Okay, well, whatever it was. Thank you, magician. Okay. Crisis scenes. So there's two kinds of crisis scenes, or technically multiple kinds. There's mini crises along the way where your protagonist fails to reach their goal or loses something happens to them. Their path forward seems, impossible, all seems lost. And they seem to be suffering defeat or setback, right? Where just things are not going well. And then there's the one big energetic marker plot scene called the crisis or the dark night. That is the biggest, most intense defeat of the whole story. And that comes, of course, like close to the end, right before the climax scene or shortly before the climax scene. So you may have mini crises along the way, and you should have one big crisis. So one thing to think about is that the protagonist's crisis is often the antagonist's triumph. if that makes sense. So when the protagonist is losing, it's because they're being defeated by the antagonist. And of course, you may have more than one antagonist, and sometimes that antagonist may be themselves, but just a good way to conceive of what crisis means, right? I'm going to walk you through some of the criteria of what a crisis scene is. And as before, I'm going to use an example from a particular piece of literature to help it along. In this, I'm going to be using a memoir, but what I like about this memoir is it reads like a novel. It has a beautiful story arc, and it's lots of drama. So this is from a memoir called The End of Eve, and the author, the narrator, Ariel Gore, she and her partner sell their house in Portland and move with their young son into Ariel's mother's home in New Mexico. And her mother's dying of cancer, but she's been historically abusive, narcissist, cruel, really a cruel person. But yet Ariel is trying to be the good daughter, do the right thing, take care of her. Naturally, we know this is going to backfire. So another feature of crisis scenes is that the protagonist is often at their lowest or engaged in grappling with their own worst character flaws. It can be both and all, as well as just shit's happening, you know, things are bad. So I'll read the first slide and then I'll ask for volunteers to read future ones. So this is from the text of the book, except for that first line. So I wrote at the top, even though her mother's ill, she's still abusive, and it pushes Ariel to the limit of her capacity for compassion. So this is Ariel. How are you doing? I asked when she shuffled into the kitchen. She put a pot of water on to boil. I'm dying. I'm sure you're happy to know. And then, I don't know what your family is doing here in my house. I didn't know what to say. Your family, my house. I was tired of this shit. Tired of making excuses for her. Tired of blaming the tumors or anyone else. I shook my head, looked right at her, and said, if anyone in your life has ever treated you like family, it's been me and my kids. If you can't see that, take it up with God. As I turned away, I heard her low whisper, you just made a big mistake. Though this isn't like an example where she behaves the worst in terms of Ariel's maybe thoughts about her mother, I do like how it shows her, you know, here's a woman with cancer, you would think you would just be at your ultimate sacrificial noble, but instead, you know, she lets the snappy side of herself out, and it's leading to something bad, right? This is the foreshadowing. You just made a big mistake. So another, I would say the key feature of a crisis scene is that something may appear to be irrevocably lost or the protagonist defeated. So after that exchange with her mother, she takes her son to preschool, and upon her return, she comes home and finds, who would be willing to read the next passage for me?
I'll go ahead.
Thanks, Martha.
27 giant black garbage bags in the driveway, our red couch behind them, the grandmother clock, my old hobo bird painting propped against the turquoise trailer. Saul pulled over and I climbed out of the car, blast of cold air and the sound of my own boots on the gravel. I tried the front door, but it was locked. My key didn't work. That's when I noticed the living room windows were all boarded up. I walked around the side of the house. My mother's bedroom was the only one not boarded. It was open, and there she stood in her green Patagonia jacket, just staring out the window, the screen behind us. What's going on, Mom? What are you going to do? She was quiet at first, didn't move except to smile at a question like that. Don't worry about me, she finally said. The devil takes care of his own. Yikes.
I know, and I love that rebuttal as a comment to the thing about God, the comment earlier about God. It's like, she's like, oh, I'll take it up with the devil instead. It's like, oh, damn, Mom. So here, Ariel and her partner sold their house. They no longer have a home to go home to. Their stuff is on the front lawn. Mom is not going to be reasonable. She's changed the locks and she's dying like at the same time. So it really looks like, what the hell are they going to do? How are they going to go forward? And I don't actually have in here what they do end up doing, but suffice to say, it isn't the end of everything for Ariel. However,
what's this book called again?
The End of Eve by Ariel Gore. It's a good one. Yes, narcissistic mother stories. So Ariel and her family have nowhere to go. They're stuck. What ends up happening? So another feature of a crisis scene is that a crisis sometimes contains a breakdown that often inspires a breakthrough. And especially in fiction, this is really true, and you really want to highlight this when possible, how can the stripping away of goals, of hope, of expectations actually kind of, what I like to think of it as, lay the truth bare for your protagonist? What can it reveal by pulling away everything and making them feel lost or hopeless or defeated? What can arise out of that that's fresh, new, and useful? So it's not that I think that all loss and pain and defeat has to have a silver lining, but for this perspective of fiction, you know, sometimes it does galvanize our protagonist, right? It's like a lot has to be stripped away in order for them to realize who they fully are, what they really want. You know, it's like you take everything away, or you take away what they were after or what they thought was their goal. And then who do they have to become now, or who are they in the aftermath? So what comes out of this for Ariel is an opportunity to see that there was never any amount of good daughter that she could be, nothing she could do to be loved by her mother, that her mother's narcissism is just too deep. And even being right up against the face of death isn't going to change that. So for Ariel, it's the beginning of a process of letting go that, you know what, she can't and she won't. She can't take care of her mother. Her mother won't even let her. So it's the breakthrough that comes for her is, okay, you know what, I tried, I did my best, and now I have to move on. And it's painful, but it's not going to change. So I want us to write a moment of defeat or setback or loss for your protagonist. And I know that many of you have already done this, but see if you can't either come at it from a different angle, or even find another loss that maybe you haven't put in there, or defeat. And what I'd like us to try to do is to write into the crisis itself. So don't try to write a setup or a buildup, just like put us right in the middle of it. What does it look like in one of your protagonist's worst hours? And try to, you can do whatever you want. They can be thinking about it. They can be talking to someone about it. It can be an action scene. Let's see what you can come up with here. And I will give us some time. Bench. Well, that came up fast. Give yourself another 10 or 15 seconds to finish your thought. Okay. All right, come back to me. Anybody want to start sharing? Martha? I felt it.
Yeah, okay. I'll confess I didn't write this fresh, but this scene came to my mind. I thought I just felt compelled. Sort of a reversal of power, which is kind of cool. Come on, let's make music together, he teases. I'd love to make music with you, but not now, not here, Demi. Now get off me, you ugly brute, I snap. He grunts and thrusts himself against me one last time before getting up. He stands and brushes himself off a second. But then he's back at me, hands fast and frantic, capturing me in a headlock, wrapping his knuckles hard against my head. Quit it, I scream, struggling and clawing to get loose. He doesn't know his strength. I bite him in the ribs, enjoying the feeling in the roots of my teeth. Ow, God damn it, Alora, he roars, releasing me, shoving me away. I flip my hair back, hot and angry, and shove him with all my might, making him stumble backwards. Serves you right, you dick. You bit me, you goddamn animal, he says, holding his side. I pull up his jacket and shirt. Red crescent moons mar his pale skin. I didn't mean to break the skin, I say, in mock innocence, reaching to touch my teeth marks on his side. Don't touch it, he slaps my hand away. Well, don't you put me in a headlock ever again, I square him off, ready to bring up past offenses. But my shoulders slump and I begin to cry. Demi, this isn't us. This is the Huldra thing. It's making us a little bit crazy. We need to calm down. His shoulders slump. I know, you're right, he says. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's definitely a different position than we've seen them in before.
Yeah.
I like it. Thank you. All right. Who would like to go next? Oh, you quiet types. Oh, Sochi.
Mine is terrible. I'm really distracted in my household right now. I haven't written in a month, so my brain is kind of mushy right now. Okay. The wind howled through the trees like vultures possessed by the devil, guarding the camp, waiting to pluck the eyes of anyone who saw what wasn't to be seen. Time was swirling with the ice cold wind that added to the natural elements barricading the camp that housed thousands of innocent lives. Somewhere in that camp was Jean-Luc. And if my eyes being plucked from my face is what it took to find him, let them try their best.
Oh, I love it. You mean it's bad? Okay,
I was very distracted. Oh,
let's make a pact.
Bad.
We
That
make
was
a pact, right?
What's that?
I want to make a pact. From now on, you're not allowed to say, not allowed. Let us banish, and myself included, the idea that our writing is bad. And instead, let's replace it with the word raw, which is what I'm trying to do, is just raw, meaning because it's come out of us fresh, we don't necessarily know what to think of it yet. Okay?
I like that. Raw and wild.
Raw and wild. Okay? You're gonna have to see fiction frenzy. That's what it's called here, people. Okay, yes. Natanya, I felt you earlier.
I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Dwayne, I can't, I say between sobs. I can't get the words out, can't say what they've done to me, what I've just lost that I never had. You can't what, baby? Tell me what's wrong. I'm shaking and sobbing, and then his arms wrap around me and I go silent as I breathe him in. For a minute, we just stand in our doorway and sway while he rubs my back. I think about how sweet and nurturing he is, and how this big lug of a man who treats me like the most delicate flower, how much I want to give him a tiny him and me to nurture. And then I'm mad, and I let the anger make me talk. I pull slightly away from him and look him dead in the eye. Those white motherfuckers stole our babies, Dwayne. They took my parts back when I was 12. That's what the movie picture showed us today. They took it all when they were supposed to take my appendix. I'm empty, Dwayne. They left me nothing to give you. I hate them and I hope they burn, those fucking motherfuckers. He drops to his knees and starts shaking like he's crying, but no tears come. I've never seen him cry, just get quiet when he's sad, and he's almost never sad. He kisses my belly, my hips, my lady area through my jeans. They left me you, and you're all I need.
I'm gonna cry.
I love Dwayne.
I love Dwayne too. I love him. He's the perfect guy. Oh, that really, no, I really did I got teared up. So
Yeah.
he knows the right things to say. Thank you.
I have to have like one good, nice white guy in the story.
Well, I think it's great that he just came to you as he did. You know, he seems like he just sort of showed up. So I love him. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who's next? Rita? That face. Raw. It's raw.
Okay, this is from a short piece I'm working on. That's how it goes with children and families, things hidden in files or cabinets or closets until things come to light. Roosters come home, my mother would say. I was the one who searched out hidden Christmas presents just after Thanksgiving. I was the one who thumbed through my mother's scrapbooks filled with smiles and lipstick girls and young boys in sailor suits. Once I took a whole bottle of mint and acids. Of all the pill bottles my father hoarded in his bathroom, they came in the prettiest bottle, deep glass sapphire, and tasted best to a little girl. Not a year goes by that I don't think of my brother Anthony and how I found a stash of pornography in his desk drawer. I came upon it honestly. I was looking for his algebra textbook. It's always stunning to come across someone's porn stash, even more so when you're 11 and have never seen it before, and moreover, it's male porn and your brother's. But maybe if he kept his secret, he would have escaped.
Nice. Awesome. Great start. What's great too, the reason I wanted you guys to drop into the crisis itself is like there's so much richness in the middle, but sometimes we take our time like building up to it, you know, and I just wanted to like, let's get into it. So good. Of course, I didn't give you nearly enough time to get anywhere deep, but okay. 2 of you left. Anyone feeling it? Yana?
Oh, fine.
Twist your arm.
No.
I would never. I wouldn't dare.
Okay. No, I did not like writing this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't, I cried after her as I cautiously stepped forward. She stopped, one step from oblivion, and turned, staring through me. From the first moment she came into the world, my little sister had been full of light I could never have possessed. She was brighter than sunshine, her eyes always full to the brim with mischief and mayhem. Now her eyes were vacant. There was nothing in her baby blues, possibly acceptance. It filled me with ice-cold terror. I can't live in a world with only you in it, she said softly, almost a whisper. What? I stuttered, stepping once more towards her, just one more step. I can't, she gasps, leaning back. As my sister stepped off the ledge, I couldn't hear my scream, or hers. I don't even remember if she screamed. All I could see was her falling. As the ground began to crumble around me, all I could stare at was her body slowly fading from view. There was no sound. The air was thick. I was slow. The world was slow. Nothing was fast enough. My feet didn't move fast enough. All my training had never prepared me for this. Even while my body knew what to do, it wasn't enough. I wasn't fast enough. I collapse to the ground, scrambling to grab her hand as she falls. I miss. I feel notes scratch at my throat, but I can't tell what I'm saying. I stare at her falling away from me, towards the burning flames below, her dress flapping, holding her newly lifeless body. I turn away from her. I can't watch her be crushed by gravity. I cling at the rocks, the ground. I scratch at it. I can feel my fingernails bloom with blood, but I can't feel anything, not anymore. The sound comes back to the world, the flickering of the flames, the crashing around me. I scream.
Wow. Right in the middle of it. Beautiful. Yeah, I want to clap too. Beautifully written and visceral. I was like, I had to take a couple of deep breaths in the middle of that. I can see why it was hard to write. You know, it's good writing when you like emotionally upset yourself. You know.
I wasn't ready.
I know. Hey, well, now you've gotten most of it out of the way. Good work. Hey, Pickles, don't do that. Sajna.
I did 3 lines.
That's
Because
good.
I'm not sure I understood the prompt. I think it's something about a crisis and being in the middle of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's hard to follow up after Yana's piece. But we had 12 hours to go before midnight fell on us, but the 7th star was still a mystery. If I didn't make it to the final house before the clock struck 6, with a fully trailblazed stone, the magic would be lost forever. to time, to humanity, to the world, it would be because of me. I couldn't bring myself face to face with this fact. We would be losing. It would be because of me. There were no more clues to mine and no more mountains to climb, no more doors to knock down, no more treasures to reveal. We had lost.
Beautiful. I love them. Good work, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm impressed. So let's move on to our next. Okay. Next scene type that we're going to talk about is a contemplative, also sometimes known as a sequel scene, because at various points in the story, you may need a moment or a scene to give both the reader and the protagonist time to catch their breath, to have reactions to what's just happened. And these scenes are often slower, internal, and they often follow like dramatic scenes, suspense scenes, big moments, right? They're like time, they're giving both the reader and the protagonist a pause to absorb what has happened and to reflect upon it. And, you know, because a lot of the time the advice that we talk about is like, scenes are important, action, drama, conflict, tension. And yet there are times and places for contemplation and for slow digestion of what's happened. And of course, you don't want too many of these in a row because it does slow the pace and the tension. But after something kind of intense has happened, big, dramatic, like any of what you guys just read, there might be a time now where the character needs to go, wow, I need to figure out what just happened. So the book I'm using as an example here is this woman is the most quirky writer. I've loved both of her books, or is it 3? Her name's Lydia Netzer, and this one is called Shine, Shine, Shine. And in this scene, this contemplative scene, Sunny, the main character, she's the wife of an astronaut, and her husband's in space. And I think there's something that goes wrong where he's like stuck up there for a while. She's pregnant with her second child, and her mother, who has been ill and in a coma for a while, has just passed away. So I didn't intend to pick 2 examples of both deal with mothers, but that's what happened. Okay, so contemplative scenes, you want to start, or a hallmark of these kinds of scenes is showing the character's emotional reaction, or even sometimes just mental reaction to the events of the previous scene. So Sunny has just learned that her mother has passed away. There was a moment when Sunny was sitting at a small cheap desk at the hospital on a rolling office chair when she forgot her mother's maiden name. Then she knew she was coming unhinged. So already that like fog of grief has started to settle over her. Contemplative scenes provide emotional context for the external action. So this is where the protagonist is going inside to figure out, what do I make of what just happened? What do I feel? So in many ways, this character already feels alone and abandoned by her astronaut husband. So she's caring for their children, and she lives in a neighborhood where she doesn't know people. Now that her mother's dead, the big deal for her is that she's an orphan. So this really hits home for her. Would somebody read this little snippet? Please.
I can't.
Thank you.
In many ways, Sunny already feels alone.
Oh, sorry, that's my words. It's just the ones in italics.
Oh, okay. As an orphan, you are alone. There is no one on earth watching when you say, look at me. There is no one standing in the gap between you and oblivion, putting up her hands and saying, stop. You have come this far surrounded, and now you must continue without defense.
And here that second person, you, is her kind of thinking, you know how we sort of think in the second person, almost like we're talking to ourselves, right? These scenes also tend to have a higher ratio of internal monologue and thought versus action and dialogue. So this is your one, this is your opportunity to get away with writing that long stretch of internal monologue, because here the reader and the reader knows, okay, it's okay. This isn't going to last forever. This is a processing scene. So this is continuing. Would someone read this section in italics? This is still her thinking, kind of.
There is a real evolution of the conversation when death and birth come into it. Nothing is unspoken. Everything underneath comes out, and the darkness spills up into the everyday language. You talk about dark things because you have a decision that need to be made. There is suddenly when you have to decide between cremation and burial, or tell someone whether or not you want to be sedated or through it all.
Thank you. These scenes, of course, because of all these things, because we're in thought, because there's not a lot of action or dialogue, they tend to move at a slower pace, and that is to allow the protagonist to process, and it gives the reader a pause and often in an opportunity to look deeper into the protagonist's inner life. So, oh, this is supposed to be italics. Who would read this one for me?
I can.
Okay.
Sunny decided against a funeral. She decided that her mother would be cremated. These things were going to be handled by the guy at the mortuary, and she signed the release from that authorized him to take possession of the body. This transfer would take place somewhere in the bowels of the hospital. Her mother would exit out of the back of the building. Sunny did not know what her mother would look like at that point. It could be really terrible.
I like how this is just like, it's like we're wandering through the thought process of someone who's in deep disbelief, and, she's thinking about all these things, and, it's just kind of slowing down time in a way. Additionally, you're going to find you may have fewer interactions between the protagonist and other characters. Often in a contemplative scene, they are all by themselves, and that's okay too. And again, it's part of this. We don't sometimes characters process with other characters in dialogue, or even sometimes like someone will be there just with someone in like holding them or something. Pickles, stop it. So here's just kind of a continuation of the scene. There could have been a funeral in Yates County where all of Emma's friends could attend. There could have been a funeral in Virginia, but Sunny could not arrange a funeral now. She knew her mother would say, "Whatever makes it easier for you, dearest, do whatever you need to do." So her mother would be cremated. It all seemed so impossible that she wanted to tell the mortician to check carefully and be sure her mother was dead. She wanted to install a brightly colored button on the inside of the kiln. "If you are alive and being wrongfully cremated, press here." "Are you doing okay back there?" a nurse asked her. "I'm done, I think," Sunny said. "I think I'm done." So I like how, even though technically she's all by herself in the scene, except for there's a nurse like somewhere in the room or off to the distance, she has this like dialogue with her mom. And then the only real interaction we see is between her and this nurse who checks in on her. And I love the phrasing of "I'm done, I think I'm done." Something about that has a poetic feeling to me that I just really like. And you can't achieve that kind of thing very well without contemplation, because if it was just a fast-paced action scene, that would slide right past you. So it's just really sad and real to me, just the grief process. It really captures that. Okay. So obviously there can be all kinds of contemplative scenes. You can be, someone could have escaped the villain and just be processing like, okay, where do I go next? What do I do? How did I come out alive? It can be actual loss. It can be actual death. It could be even a contemplative scene after a success, but maybe the protagonist has to figure out like why they were successful, or, there's all kinds of times you'll feel it, I think, in your writing, when you need to go slow. And it's not going to happen a lot because too much will drag the pace down, but it will happen. So what I want us to do now is to pick a moment after an eventful part of your story, and it can be any kind of eventful, and just allow your protagonist to sink into contemplation that assesses how they feel, maybe processes what just happened, or maybe they're thinking about what they plan to do next. It can be a variety of things, but really allow yourself to go into that internal mode. Don't feel obligated to put another character in the scene unless they are there and offering some kind of support. See what you can come up with. Okay. I'm just going to step away for a quick second, but I'll be setting the timer. Another 10 seconds or 15 seconds to wind down. Okay. Anybody feeling ready to share? I'm curious if anyone else has the experience that when you write a contemplative scene, you actually kind of feel calmer or like enter almost like a meditative state. I don't know. Does anyone else have that experience? Similar? Yeah, Martha?
Yeah, I felt like you find a lot of heart there, and this is a rewrite of a scene I have, but I did find new things, so I'm excited about this. And it's a follow-up to the scene we sat together, not unusually close, our backs to the sugar maple, our backs to our childhood. The darkness now complete. When I see my sister, a spot of white in the dark, drifting down our backfield, headed in our direction, I don't even move. Neither does Demi. When she arrives, hair loose and around her ears, she looks from Demi to his sleeping bag, to the beer, and then to me. You two are really pushing it. If Mom finds out, she won't, I snap. Go back inside. No, she says, drawing out the vowel. I wanted to see what you two kids were up to. I don't bother to answer. I appreciate her timing, but I'm too lost to engage, too absorbed, trying to reach, to grasp onto the loose threads of what will become of Demi and me. Though he sits only a few feet away, he might as well be hundreds of miles.
I loved it. I like what you said about it revealing some heart. It does seem like it allows you to plumb those depths of the character. Very nice. Who would like to go next? Oh, Natani.
It kind of inspired me because I've been wondering how I'm going to do this transition with Mary Elizabeth and how I'm going to take it from third person to first transition for her. So I played with that.
Okay.
Mary Elizabeth paused in her reading, rubbed her tired eyes, and leaned back in the chair of the desk she wasn't supposed to sit at, in the office she wasn't supposed to be in, reading the charts she wasn't supposed to have access to. She put down the patient's chart and her eyes scanned the piles of files she'd already been through. She'd lost count after 200, and they were just from this clinic from the last couple of years. How many more are there? How many IHS clinics are doing this? What has been happening here? This can't be what it seems to be. This can't be the genocide it looks to be, because that's what this is, isn't it? I can't be here. Do this to how did I not see this when they came to me with questions, when they'd grab my hand with pleading eyes and ask if this was right before they were wheeled off to surgery, trusted me because I looked like them, because I am them and they are me. This is why they call me sister, and this is what I've ignored. My sister's cries, their pleas, their humanity. What have I done to my sisters? What have I done to myself? Who have I allowed myself to become? I am not myself.
Ooh, beautiful. Like the hair standing up on the back of my neck. It gave me chills. I love that. So it's like transitioning from the narrative voices in the third person, and then we go into her thoughts, which are first person.
Yeah, and then I think she's going to stay in first.
Oh, I love
from
that.
point
That'll be
on.
such an interesting sort of psychological shift in the book, because she's the only character, right, that starts out in the third person. Yeah, because it's representative of where she's at as an
Yeah,
as outside.
bubble.
Oh, I love it so much.
Yeah,
Cool.
Okay.
Love it. Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Sajna, somehow I end up calling on you last, so let's rearrange that. Would you like to go?
Yeah,
And
I'll try.
Okay.
Okay. As I reclined against a loose collection of rocks on the beach, my feet and body hurt. Not because I had been in the midst of battle, but because I had watched it from the sidelines. My fingers ached to wield the sword and not be just caught in the crossfire. It was hard to have an enormous, unfathomable power in your grasp, but I wanted more. I wanted to be the one that could control it for the world. But so long as I was human, I was just that, a bystander, even in a magical world.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm really
Oh,
loving this
thanks.
exercise. This is good. We need to do this again. Okay, Yana.
How did I know? Oh, okay. I sit in ashes, rolling them in between my fingers. What a waste. After burning, everything turns to ashes, no matter what color, size, shape, no matter how bright or dull, everything turns to gray. Everything turns to gray, colorless ashes. I raise my great hand and blow. The object particles fly into the air, dancing, flying ever up, and some even settling downward again. Are any of these pieces my sister, my mother, my father? I look up and around at the people surrounding me. I must look dreadful. I almost get up to escape, but no one seems to recognize me. A haggard man looks to me, and then away. Perhaps they have never seen me without strength before. I'm unrecognizable. So I settle again and watch the sun begin to rise. It gives me with warmth. I feel so cold. I hear footsteps behind me. A warm hand clasps my shoulder. Are they gone? You ask. I look up and see my face on yours, but your eyes remain. Flashing fuchsia. You smile, waiting. Yes, I say, turning back to the sun. I'm alone, I gasp, feeling hot rivers make paths down my ashy face. I hear you take a deep breath. Then your hand leaves my shoulder. You walk around in front of me and kneel. You reach your hands and take my face in them. You slowly wipe the gray away and stare at me, waiting for my eyes to focus. No, you whisper. You're not. I smile and I'm pulled to your chest. You kiss my head and I can breathe again, at least for a little while.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. I had the same kind of feeling at the end when Dwayne said his thing. I had the same kind of feeling with whoever's speaking to your narrator, like, oh, it's going to be okay. I don't know how. Good work. Sochi?
He was right. He said what everyone had always said. Eve had said to me what Eve had said to me the last time she spoke with me, but Fassbender put it in a way that actually made me listen. He was an enigma. I might never understand everything he represented. Everything he represented, his clothing, his posture, his speech was threatening. However, something in his eyes and the words he chose with me in private were a calm and stillness that made me feel safe enough to see myself in a way my family was unsuccessful. I feel like I don't need to run. I feel like I can plant my feet and stare my demons in the eyes and prepare to battle, facing forward instead of it behind me without control. Fassbender isn't training me to kill. He's training me to be a peacekeeper.
I like that. I like the contrast, that juxtaposition of how he represents all this horrible stuff and yet he makes her feel vulnerable in a way that her family can't. That's great. All right, Rita.
I don't think I get this.
Don't worry.
Yeah, the story's just, she's got ADD, so she jumps around a lot.
That's okay.
I'll just read what comes next. Now you probably want to know how the sex was between Alex and me. Well, I'm not going to tell you. I've got some minuscule of pride left. What I will tell you is this. He is not a bed farter and his skin is smooth. My hands are all crisscrossed with paper cuts. I didn't even notice them until me and Alex went out for ribs. The barbecue sauce got into the cuts and burned like hell.
You totally did it. It's thought process. All that we're trying to do here is enter the thought process rather than focusing on the action and the setting and the dialogue. You know, we impress, or I impress on a lot about those being important, but the contemplative parts, I think, are where you peel back the character and reveal them. And you can do it in small moments all throughout your story, but a contemplative scene is like a long, slow exhale, you know, and it allows that same quality throughout. But you can absolutely use contemplation in sentences and paragraphs in between an action to just to kind of give a beat, give a pause, tell us what's going on inside the character. So I think you all did great work on both exercises. So we'll see how we can bring that one back. And also, oh yeah, Natani?
When you're doing contemplative writing like this, how do you feel about italicizing?
I tend to use italicizing for thoughts sometimes when I feel like I want them to stand out as thoughts. I kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I italicize, sometimes I don't. But you kind of just have to play with it and see how it works for your story. Like sometimes the intentional, because italicizing kind of highlights it in a way. And sometimes that is what you want. And sometimes that actually pulls the reader out of the flow. So you kind of just have to see for what you're trying to achieve. It's like an effect, right? It's an effect. You have to see if it works. It puts emphasis on, that's the word I'm looking for. Italics put emphasis on something.
Right.
So you want to say, do I want it? But sometimes especially if you have a scene where there's a lot going on and you want to make it clear to the reader, these are their thoughts, then sometimes italics are nice because it kind of makes it clear. This isn't dialogue, it's thought, you know.
But you wouldn't necessarily
I wouldn't italicize a big chunk.
Monologue. Yeah.
Probably not. And especially, I actually think with Mary Elizabeth's character, I wouldn't do it because you want the reader to sort of not notice almost that they've entered into the eye until later on and go, wait, what just happened there? And normally I would be like, you can't change point of view in the middle of a scene. But with her, I actually think you very stylistically can and should, because you're doing it functionally, you know, intentionally for a purpose. But so cool. We're going to just take like a 2-minute break, feed the cats. I also just wanted to say that when my husband is here teaching next week, I plan to be here even if I'm in bed. So I'm not going to like leave you alone with the new instructor, and I will be here. I just might have my covers up around my head unless I'm like literally sleeping. But so I just wanted to make that clear. Okay. Yeah, let's take a quick break and then we will get back and Sajna can read a few paragraphs and we'll get to talking. Okay. Tony, I'm going to get a frame, and Yana, for this. Have you guys seen this really cool piece of art? That is it a friend of yours that made this? Or she just, do you know her, or was it just?
No, we took a photograph like that and we posted it on Social Distance Powwow. And then
Oh.
Nayana, the artist, saw it and she was like, I want to paint you guys. So yeah.
And it was part of a series she did, right?
Yeah, she's up to, I think she's done 47 now, 46, 47. So our painting and I think 25, 30 others are going to be some rich person bought them all.
Oh
And
my
they're
gosh.
touring North America. And then once
Ooh.
the travel ban is lifted, they're going to be touring Europe
Canada.
too.
It's super cool.
I got to get the perfect frame for it. That's what I'm going to, in fact, I might just go down and have it professionally framed because no frame's going to do it justice that I buy at the store. Anyways, it's such a powerful piece. I love it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Sajna, would you pick a couple paragraphs that you would like to read to put us back in the mood?
Sure. Just make sure I'm not on mute.
Nope, we can hear you.
Okay. A haze of steam and a shower of sparks ensued as I rubbed my eyes. It looked like no subway train I had seen. A gleaming black locomotive emerged out of thick clouds of steam, its massive wheels hissing and spewing snowflake-shaped blobs of fire into the platform. And I crossed my face. A steam engine of sorts, a monstrous one, stood in front of me. The indicator overhead blinked and blew out as if unable to fathom what had stopped at the station at this hour. The sizzling din of metal grinding on tracks rang in my ears like a clangorous alarm, taking me by surprise. A steam engine in Queens at this hour? How did this thing even make it through the tunnel? There was no more yellow line stopping me. I got closer and stared incredulously at the metal beast, its large circular face, now clear of the mist. That's it.
Awesome. Okay. Who would like to go first? Sochi, and then Natani, and then Martha. Then you all went at once. And I'll do the timer thing, so don't be offended.
So Sanja, this I definitely loved. I loved your last piece, but this was my favorite. This is I feel like it had so much magic in it. And I read this. I read fantasy fiction and magic. That's kind of this is my genre. And I've got piles of books where I've started it. It just doesn't, and I'll hear all this hype about different books. And I'm like, I don't really see it. But this had magic. There's books I've purchased and that I don't love the way I loved with this. And I'm very genuine with this. There was so much mystery in it. The details of the train with the writing. It was this world building. It took me away. And that's seeing a lot right now, like this time in my life, because I'm overwhelmed right now. I'm really overwhelmed. So it's hard for me to read anything that takes me away from it. And yours did this. And that is a massive compliment because I'm like in a bad headspace right now. And you did this wonderful job of taking me away from it all. And that's what you do when you want to read a book. You want to read and leave this really stressful world. And you did this. And, I love how you just pop in and just with a couple words, you're able to, see if I can find it, drop pieces of plot. Let's see if I can find it here, which I think is really a talent to your writing and your craft. There was the part where they say, no, my eye compass talked to me, or my father did. How did you? And then he says, that wasn't us. And you're like, woof, that was a big piece of plot that wasn't us, So then you're like, well, what is it? And I think that's very clever. That wasn't what us was, I think, really cool that you did that in 3 words. It flowed so well. I didn't stop. I didn't get distracted. And so that says a lot to your writing skill, where I could just read it. It just flowed. There was nothing that stopped me. There was no pause. I just wanted to know more. I wanted to read more. Had a wonderful flow to it. All your characters are just fascinating. And your world building is unique. There was a mystery. to it. And I think, I definitely feel like you have a strong novel in your hands that is marketable. I think people, and I just love, as there was also this moment, because I'm still old fashioned. I wrote it here. I'm still old fashioned. Where I'd like a knight in shining armor to come in. I do like these new books where the female protagonist is strong, powerful, and everything. But there's a place where I do like some man to come and kind of catch me, and you did that somewhere in here, and I really did love that. I think there are still a lot of readers out there that do like that knight in shining armor. So I feel that you're on the right track. This is wonderful. I really do hope you finish this, because it would be such a fun book to read, because this was fun. This was fun. It was magical. It took me away, and it was just, I kind of needed this right now, because I'm really stressed, and I loved it. And I think that's the highest compliment as a writer, is to take me away. And you did that. So thank you, Sanja.
Thanks, Sochi. Okay, Natani, I'd said, and then Martha.
I really enjoyed this, and I was so happy that it was so much longer than the last submission, because we got more and more and more, and some questions were answered and more questions arose. The heat for me is, again, your descriptions are, the narrator's descriptions are so beautiful, and I really it's nice when the plot doesn't get lost in being flowery. And the plot in this stays with us, and it's still flowery and beautiful and magical at the same time. Some of your lines just really grabbed me. The easy smile forming on his lips suggested he was from another place, a place colder, more wholesome, and happier than Queens. It describes where he's from without knowing where he's from. It describes where she currently is and her opinion of the state of that place. And I really enjoyed that a lot. I am not a fantasy reader, and y'all are starting to make me one. And I really appreciate that. I love the magic in this. I love when that train came in and she recognized the constellation from her mother's piece. I got, her jewelry piece. I got goosebumps. That was really fun. I like the mind reading. I like how the two new male characters are kind of bantering and being playful, and like, she doesn't know, but she's gonna know, and she has to decide if she's going, and like talking to each other like she's kind of not there, but also including her. Like, I like that playful banter. I liked the descriptions of them because I could see them and their outfits and the way they looked and how like ethereally handsome they were. And then suggestions like, I don't know, just more of this. I don't feel like it's missing anything, because I feel like anything that we're not getting in this submission is going to come eventually. So I just really, you're just a beautiful writer. That's all.
Thanks, Tani. All right, Miss Martha.
Hi, Sajna. So I was really excited to read this next installment. And as soon as we meet the new characters and see the steam engine powered train, it felt a little bit like comic fantasy, which I was really excited to read because I've never really read any of that. And reflecting on the first bit that we read, the story felt like it was really gaining momentum, and at the same time there was a certain lightness and playfulness after the grief and introspection of the first chapter, which I found really refreshing and fun and intriguing. And I really enjoyed your slightly elevated vocabulary, that you just snuck in these little words that I had to stop and look them up. So I really appreciate that. For YA writers, I do believe it's our job to save the minds of young people from brain rot, so I appreciate that. But to balance this slightly elevated vocabulary, I would suggest adding a little more varied punctuation, a little more playfulness in that regard, especially when there's really big moments of astonishment, going all caps. having fragments, using ellipses. So for example, there's that moment, a steam engine, dot, 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 in Queens, dot, 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 at this hour, I would put in all caps. That would give it more excitement, more energy. With Rika, I want her to have a little bit more astonishment in that moment that she meets these people, a little more just stronger emotional reaction, because I think her emotional reaction isn't quite there yet for me at this moment. And getting her reaction just right and dialed up all the way to 10 or 11 is so important. I don't ever want her to have any type of feeling of indifference or being a little, blasé about anything. She needs to have strong emotions. And I do want her just a little more sensitive and vulnerable, even though she's this sort of tough scientist girl that has like this outer shell. I do want that more of that moment where she feels a little stripped bare and she doesn't know where she's going to run or what she's going to do. In that moment, I really felt close and loving towards her. And I was really taken by that daydream. I loved that moment. And I love that the cat was walking with her mom and dad. There was something really sweet and quirky about that. I guess I'll wrap it up, but I have more things I'm going to send to you, but thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yana, would you like to go?
Sure. Okay. So I was so excited for this. I was so excited because I loved your work last time, and I was again very excited that it was longer. And I was like, oh, we get like 12 pages. I'm so excited. And the second the train came in, I was like, ooh, a train. And it was like so futuristic, but at the same time so old-timey. Like it was such a mix and it was so out of place. And I was like, oh my God, where are we going? And I really liked the dialogue between the three of them. That was really interesting to me. And the suddenness and her being like, what the hell is going on? I guess I better go with it. I don't know. I mean, how does one react to a big train all of a sudden? I don't know how one reacts to that. And I really liked that the first chapter was so sullen and it was so like kind of distant. And then all of a sudden we're just sucked into all of this upbeat banter and all these people. And like it's so different from how she is. Like it just makes her like she's slowly pulled in over time. And it's like it changes the whole dynamic of the book. Because the first chapter you're like, oh, this is how it's going to be. Okay. And then all of a sudden we're like in this new world universe type thing. And I'm like, what? So this book is going to be completely different than I thought it was? Okay. So that was really fun for me. And it turned like from this kind of futuristic, nostalgic book into this sci-fi fantasy adventure book. And I'm like, oh God, okay. That's where we're going. I really like the tension between the two officers or something. I don't really know what they are yet, of course, but I really like their banter. I really like how she's like, what the hell is going on? And then there's a mind reading thing, and all these things are being thrown at her. She has no idea what the heck she is going to do. So that was really interesting for me. What I would really love to see is more character exploration with these two. I feel like they kind of are just one note at this point. I know they're trying to keep information from her, but I would really like that maybe to be more of a struggle to keep that from her, because it seems they're pretty hot and cold, it seems, but I would like it if, since they seem to know each other and they banter so well, I would like to see how they connect more and how they're so comfortable with each other. I would like to see how that works out. And I love how scatterbrained Reiko was, and how she was unsure of what to do, so she tried to shut down and deal with what she had to do in the moment. I kind of like how she was sort of distant about it, and I liked how they kept her out but also kept her in. That really sucked me in very quickly. So the only thing I really have is I would love to see more character exploration, maybe more dialogue. But other than that, I really enjoyed this, and I cannot wait to see where it goes next.
Thanks, Yana. Rita, are you still with us?
Still with you.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a lot to add except yeah, it was very captivating. I unfortunately didn't get to read the first part of it, but I hope I get to. And I just thought it was so well paced. I don't think anybody's talked about that, but I think that's, it just moved along really effortlessly. So when you're reading it, you just kind of kept going along and didn't get too bumped out of the story. And the language was so vivid and so painterly, what I called it. Kind of like I was thinking about what was long ago, and I was very young, reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and just feeling like I was in this other place. And that's what this kind of reminded me of. It's like you just got transported to another place. So I would echo a little bit more what Martha said, is maybe showing a little bit more emotional reaction at some of the high points, just so we kind of know what our character's thinking, our protagonist is thinking and feeling, or how she reacts to certain big revelations or big actions. And then I just think a little bit, I emailed you about this. To me, it kind of got a little bit, the scenes at the end where they're kind of explaining about the tablet, and I felt like that just maybe went on a little too long. Maybe you could put her in motion and kind of compress that, go back to some of that. I don't know. That's just how I felt the first time reading it. But otherwise, it was just really beautiful piece, and I can't wait to read more.
Thanks, Rita. Is that everyone but me that's gone? Okay. Thank you so much, Sajna, and for being willing to go earlier than you had planned. I always appreciate that. There is just a magic to your writing that's so pleasurable to read. And I would have to say too, that even though there might be qualities to your story where maybe I've read versions with similar themes or something, there's something very original about your writing, and I can't even quite put my finger on what it is. I think it's your turns of phrase and the way your characters think and see the world around them. But you have just a really magnificent way of writing images and describing things in a way that's very vivid. And I just I can really see it. I could really see that train. And you set an ambiance, you set a magical ambiance with your writing. So you're already doing a wonderful job there. And I think we might've had this conversation last time that maybe at certain points, your work sort of feels like it's straddling fantasy and sci-fi, but I think it's really, sorry, I'm making noises over here. I think it really is fantasy, but your characters have this cool investment in like technologies that I think are really interesting. So it almost feels like a hybrid, which I really like, that it's like, because I think we've been trained to think of fantasy as medieval or something, but like it can happen anywhere at any time, contemporary, so I really like that intersection. And I like that your character, while I agree with others that there are places where I wanted a reaction from her, where I felt like she was just too like, oh, just another magical day in my life, like where I would have been like, what, holy, what, I wanted some of that. But I also felt like she was a character who, it's going to take a lot to surprise this young woman. Like she's not easily impressed. That's what it is. I felt like she was not easily impressed. And I feel like that's true to her character. If it's true to her character, it's working, it's coming through, except for a few junctures where I need her to be a little bit impressed or surprised, or shocked. I felt a little bit confused about what was happening with her father's voice coming through. And I couldn't tell if they had captured it somehow and were just using that to push her toward what they wanted for her. I was a little bit confused there. And I felt like at points they were a little too cryptic, where I was kind of going, wait, what's happening? So I felt like maybe, like Rita said, rather than having them spend as much time in dialogue, you could kind of have them hustle her onto this train, and then you got to choose. Maybe it all happens really fast, and then once she gets into action, then they start explaining things. Like I kind of felt like we needed more of that sense of a ticking clock. Like they have an agenda, she needs to get on it. And I wanted to feel her tension between, I want to get on this train because this is really interesting, but I have a job interview that's going to change my life. I wanted to feel that tension more, where she's like anxious and looking at her watch and like, oh gosh, both of these are once in a lifetime opportunities, and I have to choose. So I just wanted to feel that pull a little bit more. But your writing style, your voice, the way you set a scene, in this character is all really compelling. I think it's going to be just a super fun and original story. I feel like it's really going to be something different. So thank you for sharing it with us. Now we open it to you.
Thank you so much, all of you. Great feedback as usual. I was taking notes, and I think I always benefit from this class. I'm really happy that I was able to workshop this, even though it's kind of early and kind of rough. I decided I'm in the right workshop. I think I should go ahead and, even if I don't feel great about it, I think I'll get some great feedback. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm trying to be as original as I can be. I know there's not enough material left, where you can be original in fantasy and sci-fi, but this is why I keep dipping into technology, because that's what I know. So try and mix the urban fantasy and the technology elements that we have today and try to mix it with a more fantastic backdrop, right? So trying to combine elements of two worlds, not two genres. I'm not trying to be a genre breaker or anything, but I'm just trying to combine the best of what I know into a compelling story. Yeah, I think I agree with all of the feedback, and I don't think there is anything here that I would try to explain or, that, oh no, I meant it this way and I meant it that way. I think everything makes sense to me. Yeah, the protagonist, I've gotten this feedback before anytime I workshop this chapter, that she seems a little cold, not exactly very expressive. I'm trying to convey the feelings of I'm trying to convey the emotional makeup of someone who has gone through a loss. So I don't want to make her too, just a very jovial person. She has to be a little intense, sensitive. At the same time, a little bit of, something needs to draw her out. I'm trying to work on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some work needs to be done. Yeah.
Oh, I think you're doing a great job, and I appreciate people sharing something that you consider rough or not a polished draft, and that, and you can always tell us that, because that does, for me, that informs how I approach the piece, right? Like I'm not going to do a lot of line edits or anything like that. But I also appreciate that you trust us with early drafts, because that can be very vulnerable and scary to share that early stuff. I don't share it. I'll be honest. I mean, if I was in a workshop, I would, but I'm like, I know this sucks and yours doesn't suck. So that's even better. So thank you for that and your vulnerability, but I loved it. Okay, let's set our goals. Sajna, let's start with you. What's your goal for next week?
Sorry, did you ask me?
Yeah, sorry. Sajna.
Okay. I'm going to try and work on this feedback, to try and improve. Normally, I don't do that, like go back and try to edit my work. But I think if I do it right now, I can move on to the next chapter and, try to incorporate some of that learning.
Yeah, good. Rita.
I think just to keep writing. I've been having a hard time. I think it's, I've been writing for a living, and it's writing I don't want to do, and it's just hard for me to settle down. So I'm jumping around like a flea, just like different pieces. So I don't really I kind of envy you guys having really cool work to work on. So I'm just going to keep hopping around like a flea and writing.
Keep writing. Okay, good. Sochi.
I need to do more research. I'm getting into the part that I really don't want to write, but it's an important part. Going into the concentration camp, so that's going to just be ugly research. So ugly research, and then I'm going to try to do 2 pages.
Okay, 2 pages. Excellent. Yana.
I'm going to try to figure out what to do for my submission.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Natani?
I'm going to work on my submission.
And Martha?
I'd like to do the scene inventory exercise for my whole novel.
Mm-hmm. That's a big task. Good.
At least half of the novel.
Okay.
Halfway.
For half of novel. Awesome, everybody. Okay, so I will send out recording and slides. Have a good week. I will see you here in some forum next week for a character development personality type lesson, which will be fun. And then we'll go back to our regularly scheduled workshop style the week after that. So no critique next week. Just show up. And like I said, if I feel well enough, I will lead us in a writing exercise. If I don't, I'll just shiver under the covers and wave. Okay. I'm trying to think. I get my shot Thursday morning. They say like 24 hours is when the symptoms hit. So Friday morning could be the worst of it. Maybe by Friday evening, I'll feel better. So
What happened to me? It was like 5 a.m. I woke up with like
that's what I've heard from everybody. It's like in the middle of the night or in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, my sister was like 5 hours and, and then it hit for a couple hours and it went away. But for me, yeah, it was when I got it Thursday afternoon and woke up Friday with
nobody in my family, like all the people I'm related to by blood, have had a strong reaction to the same vaccine. So that's why I'm expecting it. Not like I'll be happy if I don't, but I don't.
I have mine on my second on Wednesday, and I never even give it any thought that I'll be sick. So like Thursday, you may not be feeling so good. Do you teach on Thursday? I teach on Wednesday, so I'm gonna get it after I teach.
Yeah, that's good. You rest up on Thursday. All right, I'll let y'all go. Have a great weekend. Yeah, it's Friday. I just realized. I'm so slow. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Good job, Sajna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks.
Bye.